Right, so this is the explanation video for Project 3, which is a math quiz app. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the basics of this, and then I'll let you elaborate on that when I'm done. So we're going to start out with an app in the full Xcode, not Swift Playgrounds. And I'm just going to call it A3 Math Quiz, just like that. I'm going to save that on my desktop. I'll just put it in a folder, A3 MQ, to contain the files for that. And then I'm going to hit create. And there we go. So now I have my basic starter code here. And I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that, everything inside the body portion of that starter code. So in this particular app, what we're going to be doing is using state variables to represent different aspects of the code and to hold different values that allow us to interact with the Swift UI. So we're going to create a number of state variables to start out here. And the first state variable that we're going to do, and by the way, we want those inside the content view struct. So we're going to say at state, and we are going to use private variable, and we're going to call that first one text entry, because that is what the user is going to, they're going to type their input into a text entry box, so we need a variable to hold that. Now we are going to also have a state private variable called text display, which will be what the app uses to communicate to the user. A couple more, or a few more actually, state variables that we need. We need a variable that contains a number, and we'll just initialize that at 0. And we're going to copy and paste that back here again because we need another one just like it that is also set at 0. So we have the two numbers that are going to be added together, and then I'm going to have one that is called int answer. So that'll contain the answer for that. And so that's good enough to start us off with our state variables. And so what I want to do first is let's build out the structure of this app, the visual interface. And I'm going to start with a VStack here. And so we'll complete that. The top of the VStack is going to be the text display. So we'll just say text. And in that text, we are going to just put that display. So I'm just going to inject that. Just like that. And that will take care of that. And I'm not going to do any formatting or any alterations to these text elements yet. Next, I'm going to do a text entry, or text field, field. And we're going to say, type your answer. It's a lot of spaces in there. Type your answer here. And we're going to bind that now, that text field, to the text entry. And it doesn't like that because I forgot my label. So text equals text entry. That should do that. There goes that error. And you can see it says type your answer here. And before I go any further, I'm going to actually put some text in this variable. We'll initialize it with click the create problem button to start. Okay, so there is the text in that display field. And then below the answer spot here, where we're going to type, where the users can type their answer, I'm going to create an H stack because I want to put two buttons side by side. So we're going to create a button, and that first button is going to say create problem. And nothing happens when you click it yet, but I'm going to create another button, and that one's going to say check answer. Okay, so there is my very, very basic user interface, and this is really just the four pieces that I need here to get started. Let's make it look a little bit nicer though. Okay, so I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to say font, and I'm going to say large title, and we're going to add some padding, and I'm going to align it center. So I'm going to say multi-line text alignment, and change that to center. Oops, I think I got a capital in there. I did. This should not be capital L. We're a little picky around here, but there we go. And I'm going to make that blue. So I'm going to say foreground color blue. There we go. That's good for that. Next step, the text field, start with padding, and I want to align that center as well, so we can use that same property, the multi-line text alignment, to make sure that's aligned center. And I think that should be good. Actually, I'm going to make that a rounded border, so I'm going to say text field style rounded border. There we go. So that makes it look a little bit better. And the entire H stack, we're going to put some padding around. And then these buttons, let's do button style. Bordered, prominent, and padding there. I'm going to leave it there for right now. I might customize those further a little bit later. Okay, so there is my starting place. And I'm going to take that V-stack and add a little bit of padding to that as well. And that just sort of, well, I don't know. Maybe I don't like that. Let's get rid of the padding on the buttons because I'm going to have those be a little closer together, and that's fine. But that allows them to look uniform. There we go. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So next up, we want to do some functionality. The functionality is attached directly to these two buttons here. And so the first button, when I create a problem, it's going to generate random numbers for each of these two, and then it's going to write the problem here by updating this variable. Okay, so first thing we want to do is int num1 equals int random, and we're going to say we're going to give it a range 0 to 9, and we want to duplicate that exact same code but with number 2, and then we want to update the answer. So int answer equals int num1 plus int num2. And then the last thing we want to do is put the problem right here in this text. So we're going to say text display equals, and we want int num1 plus, and remember this backslash in the parentheses allows me to inject the text string there. So now when I click create problem, it will list a problem there, and it will be always generated using the random numbers. So that is the create a problem one, and so far so good. Now for the check answer. First thing we need to do is make sure that the user has entered a valid number. So we're going to say if let int user answer equals int text entry. I don't want that P there. Okay, so if it is able to be turned into an int and recast into that variable, then that's good. The next thing we need to do is check and see if it is equal to the answer. So we're going to say if int user answer equals int answer, then we're going to do something. What are we going to do if the answer is correct? We are going to update the text display to say that it's correct. So we're going to say text display equals correct. And if they are not equal, then that means they guessed the wrong answer. So we're going to say text display equals incorrect. Okay, so I'm going to create a problem. The answer is 1. Check the answer. It's correct. I'll create a problem. The answer, I have to delete that one, so it's 6. Let's do the wrong answer. Check answer, incorrect. Okay, and then if they enter something that's not a number, we're going to have an else there, and we're going to say text display equals you must enter a number. Okay, so there's a number of things that you can still do with this. One thing you might want to think about is how do you keep people from clicking the wrong button at the wrong time? Like maybe disable the check answer button until they click the create problem. Maybe don't let them check the answer until they've typed something here. Maybe you can't click create problem unless you've checked the previous answer. So you want to think about the program state. You might also, when something is correct versus incorrect, think about using color to convey that. That's another thing that you can do. And I'll give you a hint on that one. You'd have to store the color as a state variable. So there's a lot of stuff you can do here, and ways that you can enhance this basic program. So I'd encourage you to play around and push the limits a little bit before you submit this as a completed project. But that's the basics for that project, and hopefully that's been helpful for you.